Hi guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of Let's Chat Ethics. I'm your co-host Oriana.
And I'm your other co-host Amanda. Oh, and this is our Christmas episode! Woo! So, full disclosure, Oriana and I are indulging in some mulled wine.
Woohoo! And some, Amanda's eating some mince pies. I don't know why I'm not feeling mince pies this season, but I will be eating a lot of cheese.
I'm basically a mince pie at this point. I'm made of mince pies at this point. And by the way, yeah, I have a favorite, but they're not sponsoring me, so I'm not.
Yeah, you wait till you get that sponsor until you say who that mince pie is, because we'll have our 1,000 fans rushing out to that.
Yeah. Mince pies are sold out. Thanks to an ethical
podcast.
Ethical
oh
AI
gosh,
podcast.
I can see it now.
Beautiful. Oh, we can dream. This time next year.
Exactly.
So, this week, I guess we're gonna talk about the top 10 or the highlights in AI ethics in 2020. Believe it or not, there have been highlights, but I guess a highlight can also be negative. So, epic moments, iconic AI ethics moments. So, to start off, in the UK, we're currently isolated as people and as a country.
Good times, good times.
Yes. Fun times. Thank you, Europe.
Thank you, Brexit.
Yes, thank you, Brexit. Thank you, Corona. And
thank you, 2020.
Thank you, 2020. Thank you so much. So we're gonna start with the most topical thing, which would be, I think, the digital contact tracing. I don't want to call it a shit show, but the shit show that it was. TBH.
I mean, I think digital contact tracing, I think the ideology behind it actually makes sense. And I think some countries, so wasn't it Singapore actually did, and Taiwan used digital contact tracing in a really impactful way and actually did manage to track the virus. But the UK, the United Kingdom, maybe not so much. I think that's probably what's ingrained in our mind when you think of digital contact tracing, is maybe the kind of mess up we've had here with that. And yeah, I think there was I think in terms of AI ethics, the main thing was there was a lot of privacy concerns. And that's, I think, why it would probably be a big 2020 topical discussion.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the most talked about issues. And I think it's pretty interesting because I don't tend to think of AI ethics as being something that tends to make major headlines before something bad happens. Like, of course, when, I don't know, you've got Google Photos labeling black people as gorillas, of course that's gonna make headlines and it's horrific. But the privacy issues were brought to the forefront before the app was even built or anything. As soon as there was a mention that we could use digital contact tracing, everybody was talking about the whole privacy issue. And in the end, Oriana, what happened to the digital contact tracing?
Well, it's still about. It's still, I mean, it's still here, but it's just not been. I think the problem was the implementation of it was not successful, and there wasn't enough thought, strategy, and the kind of leadership, I think, behind it. Our marketing or advertising what digital contact tracing was and how it could be meaningful. So, yeah, in terms of the UK, it's just kind of been a bit of a flop, as we would say. It's not that many people have downloaded the app, and you need, obviously, a significant amount of people to actually download the app to make it worthwhile. And apparently they haven't actually been able to use it to trace many contacts as a whole. So, yes. Yeah, and a lot of money was invested into it by the UK. So it's just been a bit. I would say it's been a 2020 AI ethics highlight because it kind of, I think in the UK has been negative, but like I said, in other countries it was used kind of successfully. But I do think that's also down to culture and the way those governments work as well. Like we've spoken about before in AI and AI ethics, it's a cultural thing as well as what the actual application is. And
Actually, I've got a question. Do you think that the kind of negative publicity it got because of the privacy concerns, do you think that might have negatively impacted how many people used it, and so how effective it could actually be?
I do actually. I think a lot of people are not necessarily thinking necessarily down as deep as like AI and using our data in that sense. But I think a lot of people were just more concerned. Like I don't want the government knowing where I am. I think that was a lot of things. And I've seen when I've been in lining up for restaurants or bars when we could go. People have like absolutely been like, oh no, I don't have the app. And when someone's been like, oh, can you download the app to check in? They're kind of like, no, I don't want to. And then the person kind of behind the check-in is like, oh, okay, you can write your name and number down that way. And I think a lot of people in the UK had been like, actually, no, I don't really want that happening. And I'm not sure if it's because they're thinking about necessarily data and AI ethics at all. I think it's more down to a governmental, I don't want the government kind of knowing where I am, and just kind of this, I think it's a lot of it's control, because I think historically, I guess the UK has kind of been known as a more liberal democracy type country. And I think people here as a whole do not like being told what to do. I think, quite frankly, maybe more so than other countries, the UK does not like being told how to act or what they can and cannot do. And I think that's why there has been maybe a bit of adversity towards the app. So I think it could have been more successful if more people were on board with it. But I do think that's also a governmental issue if they weren't telling people about the pros and cons properly and telling people how their data was being used and shared. And I do think I didn't really see much much education in that area. What were your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think it's interesting that you talk about this idea that British people don't like, or they maybe don't want the government knowing where they are, etc. Like for anybody who doesn't know, I'm half Spanish, and so obviously I have Spanish nationality, and I grew up there, and in Spain, and I think in many other, probably most other European countries, we have a national ID card, which allows you to travel between countries. So in the EU, so within the EU, I don't need a passport. I just need my Spanish national ID card. And this ID card in Spain, at least, I think from the age of 16, you are supposed to always have it on you. And so the police can stop you at any time and ask you for your ID card. And on the one hand, yeah, I think that is kind of intrusive. And I wonder if it's a bit of a leftover from the dictatorship in Spain. I don't know. But at the same time, I love that I don't have to carry a passport around when I travel. It's pretty great. It just fits in your wallet. It's like the size of a credit card. But when I told my British friends about it, they were horrified that you would have to carry this specific form of formal ID on you and that the police could stop you and ask you for it. But at the same time, the UK, I think, has, in worldwide, the biggest number of CCTV cameras, etc. So whether you like it or not, the government knows where you are, or they can know where you are. Maybe it's kind of one of those Schrodinger's problems with the electron and stuff, where like either you know where you are or you know at what time, something like that. But yeah, it's very interesting, and I think I understand people's concerns, because I think like Ivana said last week when we talked to her in last week's episode, this week's bonus episode. yeah, historically governments have kind of fucked up and done shit with our private data. And so yeah, I get it. At the same time, I think, I don't know, maybe I have a little bit of trust still in the government, that maybe I'm naive. I don't know.
No, I completely, I think in the UK anyway, I think people live under this maybe a false understanding that we're really, really, really free, and that we're completely, like, you know, the government doesn't control us in any like way, shape or form. I do think that's something that UK people as a nation do kind of believe with, that we're hence why that would be something that someone would be really upset about, like, oh my God, I can't believe you had to carry your ID on you. And I do think that's why there has been a bit of adversity to kind of the rules in the UK for coronavirus. And so digital contact tracing, people haven't taken to, because they don't like the idea of the government kind of following or tracing them. However, I don't actually think that people realise, like you said, that in the UK that we are, like, London has some of, I think, the most CCTV cameras, or the second most in like the world. And we are constantly tracked all the time by CCTV. There's way more CCTV here than there is in America, for example. And I think, so it's just interesting, I think, how we're, as a nation, very adverse to digital contact tracing, but not realising that, like you said, the government know all our moves anyway. We're being tracked by cameras before 2020. And I think 2020 maybe just highlighted to people how much the government can get involved. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it's good to have trust in your government, whatever country you are from, because if you have zero trust in your government, I guess that is going to lead to just, I guess, unrest and whatever. I think it's good to have some trust in the decisions that are being made, but I do understand when people aren't trusting, because 2020, I guess, for a lot of people in a lot of countries has maybe highlighted how their governments have not dealt with the pandemic well. Because I think that's one thing that's definitely happened this year, is we've seen which governments have dealt with this well versus which governments have dealt with this terribly. And I think that's been another thing that's kind of shattered public trust.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
mean, it's really, when I, sometimes if I'm on YouTube and the little like suggestions of news come up, and whenever you read the comments, even on like videos from the BBC or reputable news sources, like, I don't know, the Guardian, the Telegraph, all the comments are people who don't they don't believe that corona is real. They think it's a hoax. They are sick of the lockdown because the lockdown didn't work the first time around, but it did. I mean, it's just that it didn't destroy the virus, but it did slow down the thing, right? So it's, yeah, I feel like a lot of people have lost trust in the government because of that. And maybe, I don't know if the failure of DCT fed into government distrust, or if government distrust fed into the DCT.
I think a bit of both, because I think if digital contact tracing had worked the way it was meant to, look at, like, if we take Taiwan really got on top of the virus like so quickly. So I do think if digital contact tracing had worked as well it was meant to in, say, the UK, then probably people would have, and then that would definitely have an impact on the spread of the virus. And then that might mean we would be in a better position than we are now. So I think that would mean that as a whole, the nation would probably have a bit more trust in the government. But I'm just going to sidetrack into our next one, because I'm thinking we could get in a digital contact tracing hole for a while. I think
Christmas special on digital contact tracing.
I know, we could literally do the Christmas special on this. But I think the next one that I would say would stand out for me in terms of AI ethics would be facial recognition being taken off the market by like IBM and Amazon and a few others after the Black Lives Matter movement. I think that one was a big one this summer that was definitely thrown into the media, and I think a lot of people actually started to understand the impact of what facial recognition can do that maybe wasn't highlighted before. Because I think a lot of people had maybe heard of facial recognition, but I don't think a lot of people understood maybe what it actually is or does, or who's using it, how it's being used. And I think this summer massively highlighted yeah, exactly that. So I think that's one that definitely stood out for me. I don't know what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, I think definitely the summer was, oh my, was it the summer for AI ethics? Maybe there's so many things that happened. But I think in terms of the facial recognition, I think, yeah, people realized just how widely used it is, how it's being used, and how it can fail. And also, more optimistically, how effective activism can actually be. Because I think, I don't know, when I was a bit younger, a teenager, I was all about going to demonstrations, and I was very politically involved, and I still am, but not to the extent that I was. And I think for some time I lost faith. Like, I remember after the Brexit vote, etc., there were some demonstrations, but essentially nothing came out of these demonstrations, right? We never had a second vote. Nothing, even though the vote was declared illegal, but not the vote, but the no campaign, right? Yeah, the no campaign.
Yeah.
Sorry, the leave campaign. I'm getting my referendums mixed up. Yeah, that made me feel a bit like, oh, maybe it's totally pointless. It's very easy for politicians, etc., to just ignore. But the fact that even companies like Amazon would take notice of activism and pull something as big as facial recognition of the market, it's, yeah, I don't know. I left, can I say, warm, fuzzy feelings for Amazon? Like, for once. I can't believe it.
I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think. I think off the back of the Black Lives Matter protests and movement this summer, I do think that was definitely a massive positive that came to light. And like you said, it just showed that activism in this sense did actually make a difference, because that's a very huge move for IBM and like Amazon to actually stop selling their facial recognition to the police force. I think my more cynical view on it, though, is like, why were they doing that in the first place? And
it's not an episode of Let's Chat Ethics if Oriana.
I'm sorry, but it just got us in there. I think, no, I think, obviously, I think it's great that it's off the market, but I think it's more disappointing that it took maybe this for it to get off the market. And I know that's how, I guess, life works in many ways, that we have to have activism to push corporations to do things in a more ethical way. But yeah, I was just maybe more a bit disappointed about how many companies were using this facial recognition before that in such kind of a secretive, negative way, because like I was saying, not many people knew how it was being used. But I would say that is a positive to come out of 2020, that these companies did take it off the market. And I'm not going to give them too much credit, but because I don't like giving corporations too much credit, but I'm happy it's off the market.
I know. I'm really hoping that like future generations see this and go like, yes, it's worth doing some activism for the things that you believe in. And
100%. I think
beautiful.
That's a good thing. I think activism should never be like, no one should turn their nose up at activism ever, because when you think about most of the big movements in the last like few hundred years, it's taken activism, like civil rights movement, women getting the right to vote. All these things have been through movements. So even though sometimes the world can feel hopeless in certain aspects, it takes movements to get these things going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's a good thing that's definitely come out of 2020, that being removed. And hopefully this will stay this way, and that facial recognition will not be used by these big companies again in such a negative force.
Yeah. I think another thing I've loved in 2020 that it's not exactly something that's been in the news, but something that I, as an academic, as a PhD student, have experienced and have been really inspired by, is the fact that this year, I think basically every major conference, excuse me, in natural language processing has had either a special session or a panel or a workshop on AI ethics in whatever discipline it was. So, we had a lot of, I do natural language processing. So basically, I think every one of those conferences has had a whole session on AI ethics. And there's been a lot more publications, but having a special dedicated section of the conference for AI ethics, for me, it's a wonderful thing. I think it's so important to build it into the culture, and by having a special section where you're specifically asking for papers on AI ethics really inspires and makes people want to work on this, and that I think is really great. And it's clearly an acknowledgement from the board that this is important and we should be looking into it. So that's been super exciting. And I know, Rihanna, that you had a chance to listen into a couple of them.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that I've actually spoken about with just my friends in general, how this year I've noticed such a big shift in how people view ethical AI or AI as a whole compared to a few years ago. Like the last few years for myself, like working in this space, it's taken it's been very slow, and like people, like you were saying, like you go to conferences, you go to talks or workshops, and there hasn't really been kind of as much talk about ethical AI as there has been, it seems, this year. And I felt like from the beginning of the year, it was like slowly trickling before coronavirus happened anyway. And then in terms of just like working with different people and going, like you're saying, to different conferences and events, everyone is prioritizing ethical AI, and it almost feels actually a bit surreal. Like it does. If you'd said this to me 2 or 3 years ago, I would be like, no, surely not. But it's like, it kind of feels like it's exploded into this real, actual, recognized field where it's like now ethical AI is actually a field that people want to work in and are working in. Whereas before it was like kind of just AI or like, and all the like fragmented parts of that. And that's, I think, been a really positive thing to come out. And I guess maybe because this year's kind of highlighted how much AI can go wrong. So yeah.
I think we had like in 2016 maybe there started popping up more papers on AI ethics. I saw there was a really funny cartoon. It was like a graph of the number of publications in AI ethics, and they were like maybe 1 or 2 per year. And then in 2016, it was like, oh shit! And then they just like shot up exponentially. Yeah. And it was just a cartoon. I don't think it was based on real numbers, but I think people used to have this idea that AI and AI ethics were very separate, and AI ethics was this kind of very philosophy, like what if robots should become human or get human rights and get personas and stuff, all very like hypothetical, and suddenly people have realized that AI, not suddenly, obviously there's people that have been working on this for a long time, but it's kind of really come to the forefront and come to the attention of the general public and everybody that AI is kind of here. I don't really want to refer to what we call AI today as AI, but that's just me being a little picky. But that what people are calling artificial intelligence is having a real impact and is being really used today. So we have to keep it in check, and we have to keep ethical questions up front like we do with medicine and etc. So that's been, I don't know, for me that's been really exciting to see that really recognized by companies and academics alike, because usually conferences are sponsored by
I completely agree. I think before now it was kind of like you were saying, there wasn't really, it was always just kind of seen like, oh, it's like philosophy talking about what will happen in 100 years? Will robots take over the world? And will just all these like, will robots come and kill us? And I do think before the last few years, honestly, any conversation I would have with people, they would literally say that to me, just like, AI is basically robots coming to take over, and that's that. And I didn't think,
Terminator, Hulk, or 5,000.
Yeah,
or
literally.
whatever.
And I was just like, no, and I don't think a lot of people realize maybe until actually, again, recently. I don't think the general public really realized until the last 2 years, or maybe this year even more, how much AI is in our everyday life already.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've liked seeing. And I think it's also been nice for me to see how many startups and like all sizes of business, and it's not just tech, like marketing companies, like creative businesses, who are all suddenly like, oh wait, we all use AI, and that means how we're going to be using it ethically. And I think everyone started to realize how much it does impact the everyday life. So I think that's been I would say that's a massive, like you said, big positive to come out of this year. And I do see it only going like from strength to strength now. I think pretty much I predict that like every conference now and every workshop and stuff will have some reference to ethical AI and how people are using it ethically. I do think that's going to be completely the way forward now.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well. I think that's probably my favorite thing, like work wise, to come out of this year, definitely.
Okay, so my next favorite thing that happened in AI ethics in 2020 is this podcast. We started this podcast, I guess towards the end of 2020, but it's still wonderful. We have a lot of fun doing this. I hope you guys have fun listening to our podcast. And maybe the wine is the mulled wine is getting to us now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was going to say, I think this is definitely one of my favorite things to come out of 2020. I did not think that I would be doing a podcast with someone this year, and that someone to be Amanda. And the thing is,
in fact, Oriana and I didn't even know each other.
I was going to say, at the beginning of 2020, we didn't even know each other. We only knew each other halfway kind of through this year. So that's definitely been one of my highlights of 2020, this podcast. And also getting to know Amanda. That's been a highlight of 2020.
Oh,
I know.
You've been a highlight for me too. When Oriana and I have matching cups now.
I know. I don't know if that makes us cute or losers, but we love it.
Yeah, are we cringy? Okay, more epic moment in 2020. We did do a full episode about this, so I guess we won't get into it too much. But obviously there was the Timnit, Google firing Timnit Gebru.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a low moment of 2020, especially for ethical AI, as she was such a leader in the ethical AI space. So I think that was just a really, really disheartening moment, I think, for the whole AI community. As I guess it just highlighted how, like I said in the episode, really how toxic those companies like Google can really be, especially towards Black women. So yeah, and I know she's since our last episode, she's continued to speak out about all the negative treatment she had as a Black woman at Google, and how much Black women are silenced at Google. And I know that's been a hot topic on Twitter now. So yeah, I think it's amazing that she's speaking out and sharing her experiences, though, so that I guess other people won't fall into that kind of area.
Yeah, that's definitely been a low point in 2020, but we've got her next move to look forward to. So I wonder where she's going to go to next. Maybe she'll consider a position in Edinburgh.
There we go. Oh yeah, I'm sure she's. I feel like she's probably inundated with job requests. So I imagine she's such an inspirational leader. So I know I'm sure she has so many requests from people to work with her. So yeah, but it's really amazing though, without people like that who actually do kind of ring the alarm on these, like whistleblowers who do kind of ring the alarm on these companies, these companies would continue to kind of get away with this really bad behavior. So hopefully, even though I'm not too optimistical, but hopefully Google will make some changes.
Oriana, the forever skeptic.
I'm sorry. Get me some evidence when they can tell me different, and I'll change my mind.
This is a balanced podcast. Oriana hates big tech.
Hate is a strong word. I just...
Okay, sorry.
Ariana dislikes some of the movements that big tech do. Hate is a strong word. I think they have some positives too.
Oriana is big tech critical.
Exactly. I'm a critic. You can be a critic, and that doesn't mean you hate. Okay, it's good to have criticism.
Any more moments? I feel like we're probably missing
I think
something epic right now. Something major that happened in the first half of the year, but then Corona happened.
I feel like this is the thing. Our minds have honestly been, I know my mind anyway has been consumed with what's happening. Can I go to the shop today? Can I not? Are we in another lockdown? Are we not? Is the virus like, have I got coronavirus? Have I not? It's just, I feel like that's basically 2020 in a nutshell. So I think it's hard to, I guess, remember all the moments, but.
I was 28 at the beginning of the year, and now I feel like I'm 50.
Honestly.
But something actually we could talk about in 2020, something that happened because of Corona, is that our behavior completely changed all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that messed with a lot of AI systems.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to kind of consider, right? So a lot of time people talk about how data is very valuable, but it's time sensitive. Most data, maybe not medical data, actually. But you know, the pandemic was something that had such an impact and such a change in our behavior so quickly, that really kind of highlighted just how useless in a way data that is old can be. So that was interesting.
Yeah, because that's such a good point, because no one apart from Bill Gates, may I add. So I'm not going to say no one, actually. Let me take that back. Bill Gates, and I'm sure a bunch of other people could predict that this would have happened, but as a majority, the world did not predict that a virus was going to sweep the land and that we would all be working from home where we could. Obviously, some people weren't fortunate enough to work from home, but more of the majority were able to work from home, I guess. And everyone's, like you said, habits completely changed. And I think the natural human habit has been more to be like embracing of like your colleagues, your friends, your family, to hug, to touch. A lot of cultures are like that. I know, especially in Europe, quite touchy-feely. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, you see your friends, you want to hug them. Like, a lot of cultures in Europe will, like, kiss on the cheek.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Spanish. I kiss people when I meet them. I'm like, come here, wah, wah. And here, I'm like, people have to tap me on the foot. And I'm just like, you're dirty, not me.
That's the thing. I feel like it's been a year, like you said, where and if an AI system, if we'd taken any human out and we just left AI to predict, or going off old data, you would never have really predicted that everything would completely shift this much. And
remember when Corona was just a beer?
Exactly. And apparently their sales fell by like 60% in the first half of the year.
I bet. I mean, honestly, if somebody mentions Corona now, like, beer is the last thing.
But also, I love Corona beer, so no slander on Corona beer. But yeah,
I think Oriana has been single-handedly responsible for all the Corona.
No, that's not quite true. Definitely Kava. Or should I say Kaba? Yeah, I think the fact that our whole way of life has completely shifted is, like you said, a huge thing to come out of 2020, and this whole thing of the new normal. What is normal anymore? What will happen in life after Corona? And there's so many questions that, aside from AI ethics, just general life of Corona has left us in 2020. I just for me anyway, I know that when I think of a year ago, I'm just like, there's part of me that's like, oh, I want to give myself a pat on the back, like, you don't know what's to come. Because, you know, when everyone was like...
You have no idea.
Everyone was just like, new decade, 2020. Everyone was like, last New Year's, everyone was really celebrating. However, at the same time, I do think for anyone listening to this, if you have made it this far in 2020, I do think everyone does deserve a pat on the back, because wherever you live, wherever you are in the world, like, everyone has been through a massive life change, and with life change comes anxiety and upset. So I think everyone, if you're listening, pat on the back, because if you're listening, you've made it this far, and I feel like everyone should be proud of themselves, whatever they've done and whatever they've achieved this year, because it's been a hard year to achieve such things. So right now, Amanda, pat on the back.
Pat on the back. Have yourself a mince pie.
Have yourself some mulled wine.
Yeah,
and Merry
mulled
Little
wine.
Christmas. Or like,
Ching. Here is some.
oh, there we go. And they're like, and then this is when we have to do our Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Okay, so on that note, guys, I think we're going to close out on this episode, and I hope you have enjoyed. I hope whoever's listening right now, you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
A very, very Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and hopefully 2021 brings us a lot more positivity and joy. And this time next year, Amanda and I will do a even more crazy roundup of ethical AI.
Yeah, hopefully not over Zoom.
Hopefully in person, yeah.
Yeah, and we will be sponsored by my mince pie provider. Wink, wink. You probably know who you are.
Exactly. And if you're listening now, mince pie provider, we're waiting for that big sponsor deal.
Yeah, bring them back next year.
Oh
I
my
need
gosh.
them. I'll be looking out for them in September.
Oh my god, I feel like this is where our episode starts to become unhinged.
So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, because this is our last episode of the year. Oh my god.
I was going to say, actually, I
this
feel
is
like
our last episode of the year.
thank you to everyone who has listened to our podcast. And we actually genuinely really appreciate your listening. And as always, like we said, if you do have any feedback, we would appreciate it. But yeah, we've really enjoyed making this podcast. So we hope that we can continue giving you some podcast joy in 2021.
Yeah, this has been the highlight of at least my week, Oriana.
Oh, it's definitely the highlight of my week.
Yeah, this has been the highlight of our week for the last few months. I think we've both really enjoyed it. We love whenever we get a comment from anybody. That's honestly great. So yeah, I would be really happy to hear from anyone else, and you can look forward to more collaborations, more guests, and hopefully more mulled wine in 2021.
Exactly. And hopefully a world where ethical AI is taking over the universe.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll see you in 2021.
Bye.